Okay, so today's video is just a little bit different compared to what I usually do. In fact, today I'm going to be in front of the camera a lot more than usual, because this episode is not about a specific game or movie, but is instead about a specific current event and idea that overlaps with entertainment news. A very serious topic, which is to say depression and suicide, and what people in the public sphere get wrong about that said depression and suicide. This topic was unfortunately inspired by the recent news regarding Jeff Baena's suicide. Baena was the writer and director behind films like Life After Beth, The Little Hours, and Spin Me Round. And on January 3rd, 2025, Baena tragically took his own life. He was age 47 and survived by his wife Aubrey Plaza, an actor who often appeared in Baena's work, his parents, and step-parents. In a joint statement, Plaza and Baena's family said, "This is an unimaginable tragedy. We are deeply grateful to everyone who has offered support. Please respect our privacy during this time." End quote. Now, before we go any further, let me just state up front, today's episode does not speculate on aspects of the story that are unknown to us at this moment. I am obviously not privy to the reasons why Baena committed suicide, or the physical events and mental circumstances inside his own head that led him to sadly incorrectly believe that suicide was a desirable option. We of course don't know what exactly happened, and honestly that's okay. It's none of our business. It would just be disrespectful and irresponsible to theorize anything about what transpired during this tough time with so many people grieving. It's just not something I will discuss, because that's something only an asshole would do. And at least, in this instance, I'm not a asshole. What I will discuss, however, is the public discourse involving mental health surrounding this tragedy. Because while most people have been offering their condolences to the deceased and his family, though there sadly have also been a few posts pining about how they now have a chance to be romantically involved with Baena's widow, Aubrey Plaza, which, what the I've been seeing a few, not a lot, but a few people claiming that Baena's suicide was selfish, that his actions were worthy of condemnation because he was only thinking of himself and not his family, friends, and loved ones. And these accusations that Baena's suicide was selfish are worth discussing because they highlight how many people still misunderstand the nuances of mental health, depression, suicide, and etc. Because even though the stigma surrounding mental health has decreased over the years, there is still work to be done in order to bridge the experiences between those who experience mental illness and those who are ignorant of the challenges facing those of us with mental health struggles. And yes, I include myself here. As someone who has depression, OCD, bipolar 2, ADHD, gender dysphoria, and so many other illnesses, mental health is a very important topic for me. It's personal, because educating those who don't experience these types of internal mental health difficulties need to understand just how debilitating those said mental health issues are. And educating them is honestly something I'm personally very passionate about. Because despite what some may say, empathy is good. And some of the uninformed responses to Jeff Baena's suicide seems like a good opportunity for me to help educate other people on the matter. So to start, let me just state up front that suicide is the wrong and illogical choice. It honestly doesn't matter what you're experiencing or going through. Removing yourself from existence is not the greatest path forward because you both deny your loved ones of your presence as well as any hope or opportunity that things can improve for yourself in the future. Meaning that if you ever feel suicidal, please get help. You are wanted, you are loved, and you deserve to live. But with that said, I do understand how difficult it is to overcome those really difficult emotions and suicidal feelings. Because speaking from my own experience, when I'm at a personal low and contemplate killing myself, it's very difficult to approach that situation from a logical angle. Because think about it, when you're in immense pain, your brain essentially enters fight or flight mode, meaning that you desire to escape this overwhelming agony by any means necessary. It's just an all-encompassing anguish that makes the illogical act of suicide appear logical in the moment, even though that line of rationalization is completely irrational. And that pain is extremely important to note, especially considering many outsiders who have never experienced suicidal ideation and depression don't understand how overwhelming this feels. After all, they'll say things like, why don't they think about their family and loved ones? Why can't they go to a hospital? Why can't they just try not being sad? Which, wow, holy shit, just stop being sad. That's genius! Why didn't I think of that? This changes everything. In other words, people unfamiliar with this level of internalized torture will ignorantly comment on someone afflicted with this consistent suicidal ideation and detail why their desire to live should be obvious, and wonder why we, the sad, no relation, can't explore certain avenues or ways of thinking that would allow us to improve our vulnerable emotional state. But here is the thing. When suicidal, you can be cognizant of all the coping stratagems in the world. Yet the psychological suffering can be so overbearing that all the tactics and coping skills utilized to combat this type of deep depression become secondary because, God, this hurts so damn much. As I said earlier, in this type of pain, you don't approach this excruciating emotional torment logically. Intense depression is like a hole that digs deeper and deeper the longer an episode goes on, as well as when these episodes increase in consistency. And it becomes increasingly difficult to pull yourself out of that said hole. Because anytime you try to dwell on how ending your life would affect your family, friends, and loved ones, deny yourself of a happy and better future, that maybe you should reach out and get help, go to a hospital, practice healthy coping mechanisms and such, it can feel like trying to scratch and claw your way out of your own tormentous abyss, your own fucking hell, because getting out of that hole is just an uphill climb. And don't just take my word for this. If you do require a second opinion on the matter, I do have a good recommendation. In fact, Doctor Shauna Springer wrote an article titled "Is Suicide Selfish?" that was published on Psychology Today back in the June of 2018, link in the description. Per the post, I would argue that suicide is not a matter of selfishness, based on the following observations. The suicidal mode is an altered state of consciousness. When a person is battling with their demons and feeling of hopelessness, their thinking is often significantly distorted. They do not see reality the way they would if they were not in suicidal crisis. Their thoughts loop on the theme of how they are a burden to those they love. Their brains make a case for how others will not really miss them, or that in the long run, those they love would be better off without them somehow. Of course, loved ones often vehemently disagree with this. An analogy may be helpful to illustrate this point. Take the case of a person who is in the grips of late-stage eating disorder. Such an individual may be dangerously underweight and will appear so to others. However, when they look in the mirror, they see themselves as fat. In a similar way, those towards the end of the tunnel of despair often have distorted perceptions of reality. They see themselves as a burden, the same way that an individual struggling with anorexia sees him or herself as fat. End quote. Dr. Springer then describes the demons negatively affecting those afflicted as being akin to a domestic abuser whose first move is to isolate his or her partner from the influence of those who love them, which once again is a very tough frame of mind to overcome for those with consistent suicidal ideation. But still, it can be done and is very much worth doing. Dr. Springer further states, demons will ambush those who suffer in silence, but those who break this dangerous code of silence often regain their hope and will to live. End quote. And from my own personal perspective, the avenue that those struggling with these types of thoughts should take in order to regain that said hope and will to live is by reaching out to loved ones and being honest about your struggles, because they will be very appreciated for you reaching out and letting them know how you feel right now, and because they care for you, they love you. That's why they're your loved ones. Then there's the fact that you should utilize coping strategies, though this may take some trial and error because everyone has different coping strategies that either do or do not work for them. For me, I can't stand meditation. My brain is too busy dwelling on why steak fries are called steak fries, because that's not cow, that's potato. I actually know why they're called steak fries. This is a joke. You better f***ing laugh, you piece of shit. But there are techniques that do wonders for me, and maybe they'll help you too. The next time you're in a bad mental state, consider doing breathing exercises to center yourself. Ground yourself by paying attention to what you are physically sensing with your 5 senses. Exercise. Take a walk. Watch a movie. Play a video game. See a friend. Listen to the new album by Blood Incantation. What, is that just me? Is that only me? Off. That album's a banger. But anyway, you get the point. If you struggle with depression or someday have depression in the future, discover the coping skills that work for you in order to climb out that earlier mentioned pit of despair. Because when suicidal, utilizing positive coping strategies is the correct thing to do. Sure, it can be hard sometimes, but it can be done, because despite what some people might assume about people with depression, we are actually very strong and resilient. We can pull ourselves out of these dangerous lines of thinking, even though it can be a monumental task when our mood has been so low for so long and so consistently. Survival is just an incredible feat of strength in these tough moments. It's just that unfortunately, some folks do ultimately succumb to their demons. Some people don't survive their battle with depression, and to be clear, that's not on them. That does not make them weak. Mental health, depression, and suicidal ideation are a constant work in progress, meaning that the overwhelming pain that they are experiencing with frequency is not on the victims, meaning that those who commit suicide are not selfish. So to see and hear people say that it is selfish just kind of rubs me the wrong way, because it is insensitive to how challenging it is to overcome these intense and agonizing negative thought patterns. Sure, mortally persevering for ourselves and our loved ones is the correct thing to do, and many people do indeed find strength to persevere despite all the pain, but this doesn't alter the fact that many people don't win their bout with depression or suicidal ideation. After all, these thoughts are persistent and can weigh anybody down over a long stretch of time, and they can ultimately succumb to these desires when they are especially vulnerable. And from my perspective, believing that those who commit suicide are selfish does a huge disservice to the victims who were in immense pain and anguish. While yes, they made the wrong choice, and one that transfers their pain over to their loved ones, it doesn't change the fact that a person's suicide needs to be handled and discussed very delicately, because they were in an immense amount of distress, all to the point that they believed that the only way out was killing themselves. Even though that line of thinking is once again illogical, considering all the intricacies, nuances, and aspects of life that are worth living for. Yet when in that much distress, it is very difficult putting the difference between living and dying in perspective. Hence why we must have compassion for those who are experiencing depression and suicidal ideation, because ultimately committing suicide is not selfish.